That's the sound of another sale on your online Shopify store. But did you know that Shopify powers in-person selling too? From events to farmers markets to shows, Shopify is the sound of selling everywhere. I've definitely been selling at an event and struggled between reconciling payment processors, inventory before and after the event, and easy reporting. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. Prep for your next event with hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/startupcpg, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/startupcpg to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/startupcpg. This isn't an ad, but I'm borrowing an ad spot to tell you about how this month, July 2023, you, yes, you, dear listener, have a chance to win one of 6 incredible prize boxes filled with some of my favorite emerging brands products that have been featured on the show. All you have to do to enter the giveaway is leave a 5-star review for the Startup CPG podcast and submit proof in a really short form. That's it. I'm literally personally packing up these boxes filled with delicious soups from Subi, the best banana bread mix from Godana's, functional mushroom granola from Forage, dried pineapple with moringa and hibiscus from Amazi, upcycled raspberry jam from Chia Smash, the most flavorful tortillas I've had from Eureka Tortilla, and Nowhere Bakery's celebrity-worthy cookie mix. It's seriously taking all my willpower to send you these prize boxes instead of keeping them for myself. If you've learned something from this show and would like to give back to us, please check out the link in the show notes with instructions on how to leave your review and enter the contest. Reviews are incredibly important for helping new people discover the show. If you have an iPhone, which over 80% of you do, I see you, it's best to leave the review in the Apple Podcasts app, which is most important for rankings. But if you have an Android, a Spotify review is also great. I already appreciate you so much for listening, but nothing keeps us all going here like a 5-star review. So hit pause now, or when you're able to safely use a phone, and head to the show notes to get entered into the giveaway. And then come right back. I'll have a Jake Carl's dance party while I wait for you. You back? Okay, cool. Nice to see you again, and thanks for supporting the show.
I want to make sure we're asking the question, what is this new technology actually enabling us to think about or do in a way that was totally unimaginable like 6 months ago? And how do we make sure that we're really thinking about and like pushing ourselves forward on the type of product development that we want to focus on? And let's also just try some cool stuff.
Welcome to the Startup CPG podcast. I'm your host, Jessie Freitag. We're hearing a lot about AI, artificial intelligence, these days, especially with the release to the public of Chat GPT, which many of you have been experimenting with. Chat GPT can help with brainstorming, writing, coding, and so much more. Definitely check out the free version if you haven't yet. When I first saw the demo of Chat GPT that used Instacart's plugin in a recent TED Talk, which I've linked in the show notes if you're curious, it generated a shopping list based on a prompt for planning a dinner party. And my first thought was, how do emerging brands fit into this picture when AI helps us shop? How can our community stay informed about how AI is involved in shopper choices and take advantage of the opportunities that are available now and going to be available? Because Instacart is on the forefront of using AI in grocery, and because they're the leading grocery technology company in North America, I decided to reach out to them. Lucky for us, Allie Miller, their Vice President of Product Management Ads, was willing to come on the show. As you'll hear, I've personally been using Instacart since 2018 and love the platform and have dug into their ads platform, third-party tools, and their new AI features from both the Chat GPT plugin to the new Ask Instacart. I think this episode is packed with really powerful knowledge from Allie about how Instacart works and the opportunities available for emerging brands to tap into this technology. Instacart partners with more than 1,200 national, regional, and local retail banners, which is approximately 80,000 stores in North America, through their marketplace, and nearly 6,000 brands use Instacart Ads to connect with consumers. Listen in as Allie shares about how Instacart's 4-sided marketplace works, how the platform has evolved in the last couple of years, especially with ML, machine learning, and AI, artificial intelligence, how Instacart is partnering with Chat GPT, both as a plugin and to power Ask Instacart, and ways consumers are using these features, opportunities for emerging brands to keep their data up to date within the Instacart platform, and use Instacart Ads to get great digital listings despite actual physical shelf placement, how Instacart Ads automates and optimizes the process to your goals, and how you can use Instacart to support retail launches, how Instacart's customer service balances using AI and traditional customer service methods, what Instacart is working on next and how the platform is evolving, and the excitement on what's ahead, and more. Hi, Allie. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I am great. It's great to talk to you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited to have you here. This conversation was prompted by, I've been an Instacart user for a long time, since 2018. This is my 5-year Instacart anniversary, I guess.
You were ahead of the curve.
So I've been a fan for a long time. I've used it on the brand side, like buying ads and those pieces. And so I've always been super intrigued by the platform. And then I think I watched the recent TED Talk with OpenAI's one of co-founders, and they kind of demoed some of the future of this is what, an integration with Instacart can look like. And then I've kind of been following like Instacart's chief architect, JJ, doing updates. And so I reached out to your team being like, hey, can we talk about how this, how Instacart can help emerging brands, how AI fits into all this? And, you kindly accepted. So just really glad to have you here and get this chance to kind of talk about Instacart for our community. So thanks for being here.
Awesome. That is all super exciting. And yes, I'm a big JJ fan as well. So he's been really leading the charge on a lot of our exciting initiatives in the AI space. And it's such an exciting time to be at Instacart and be on the cusp of all of this new technology and continue to scale everything we've built. So really excited to talk about all of that with you.
Awesome. Yeah. So first off, to kick us off, maybe just tell us a little bit about yourself, like your role at Instacart, and then we'll dig a little bit more into Instacart itself, but curious about your current role.
Yeah. So I am leading the ads product management team at Instacart, and I've been at the company now for about 2 years. And I have been in the ad space for a really long time, but mostly with one company. So I worked at Google for 15 years. I started Google pretty much right out of college with a history degree. So nothing related to technology, nothing related to product management. And I started out supporting advertisers, basically customer support for advertisers. And that is how I learned the first lessons about the ins and outs of online advertising. And from there, I quickly realized I wanted to work on actually solving the problems for customers and not just answering their questions one by one. So I started my mission to kind of weasel my way closer and closer to the product side. And I ended up getting the chance to move over to product management about 4 years into my Google career. And then I worked on search ads, display ads, advertiser facing tools, and then most recently YouTube ads, which is where I got most of my exposure to the CPG industry and really fell in love with, learning more about this storied industry and all of the expertise that they bring to advertising, to marketing, to selling real products that people love and enjoy and use every day. And so bringing that knowledge to Instacart and then starting to look at it from more of the retail media and e-commerce lens was really exciting to me, getting closer to the transaction, getting closer to actually first-party measurement and results. That was something that was really exciting to me from an advertising perspective. And then, of course, just getting to be involved with a company at an earlier stage of building out our ads platform was really exciting, has proven to be as exciting and probably more exciting than I hoped it would be. So it's been a really, really fun journey.
Oh, that's so cool. I have to imagine too that with your background is probably really fascinating to go from like digital product advertising to like working directly on a platform that works directly with the retailers and with the brands. You have physical products that are moving around more. Like that has to be super interesting.
It really is. And I think, when we were talking about AI, like the idea of I think JJ uses this term of turning pixels into atoms. And I think that is very much what Instacart does. And especially so when you start to look at it from this, new technology frontier. But I love the idea that we are basically selling ads and showing ads to consumers that become products that are in their hands later that day, within an hour, within 2 hours. And so it's a really exciting way to feel very connected to what the advertising business is actually enabling. There's a very, healthy online ecosystem as well. And those are also very valuable ads and providing value to consumers and to brands and companies. But the idea of actually creating this real life representation of what the consumer is buying is a really cool way to truly close the loop in a way that's very palpable to the consumer.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I assume that most of our listeners are probably familiar with Instacart, but in case they aren't, and there's probably pieces that even like myself as a user aren't familiar with as far as like the broader landscape and all the features. So I'm curious if you can kind of share a little bit. I understand from like a shopping experience of like I use Instacart for my grocery shopping. So I'll choose this, find the store I want to go to. I'll add my products to cart. Sometimes, I'll see a sponsored product come up. Sometimes I'll see a deal pop up of like, spend $20 within this brand and you get a deal. So that like there's kind of those different pieces. And then basically an awesome shopper, does your order and then it arrives at your door within the time frame that you stipulate. And so I'm kind of curious if you can share a little bit of kind of the back end and the broader, like from a corporate standpoint, what is Instacart? What are the different pieces involved?
Yeah, absolutely. And so Instacart is particularly interesting because it's a four-sided marketplace. We're used to multi-sided marketplaces in technology, but Instacart is a particularly interesting one because it has so many of these different stakeholders basically in our ecosystem that make it tick and create that magic that you described. Like I shop and then someone shops for me and then delivers the products to my door a little bit later. So we've got, the Instacart platform itself, one side of the marketplace. We've got our retailers, a very important part of the marketplace. So we have 1,200 retailers on our platform, which reaches 95% of households in the US and Canada. We've got brands, which is where I spend most of my time. So brands who are, advertising on the platform and reaching all of those consumers across those different retail partners. And then we have our shoppers who are really what make the entire system tick and are the people that you actually see coming to your door and that you're interacting with and are really the face of Instacart in a lot of ways. And so, this all comes back to the user who is just interacting with all of these different pieces of the marketplace and how we actually are able to then connect all of those together and drive value for each part of the marketplace and then make it work for you, the consumer, as you're placing and receiving your order. And one of the things that I really like about, thinking about consumers on the Instacart platform, retailers, brands, and shoppers is all the incentives are very much aligned at, if you zoom out, everyone wants to sell stuff. Everyone wants to create more orders on the marketplace. So brands want to sell their products. They want to reach consumers and sell products. Consumers are coming onto the platform looking to buy something. They have very high intent to buy something that day. They may be open to discovering new products, and we'll get into that in a moment. But they have this high intent coming to the platform looking to complete a transaction. Retailers want to drive more sales. Shoppers want to get orders and make sure that they're able to, shop for consumers and complete the purchase cycle on their end. And so it's really exciting to think about this from an ads perspective then. So when my team is thinking about how to drive maximum value across the marketplace, those incentives are really quite aligned. It's a world where the ads can truly be part of what is actually making the experience real. It's not something that we need to balance in terms of, we might be interrupting a user, or we need to consider, how are we bringing their attention away from what they might be otherwise doing on the platform. It's all in the service of actually helping to discover and buy products.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I hadn't thought about how it makes sense, but just the intent to buy is so much higher than other advertising areas. Like you said, you're not interrupting someone. The person is you're literally trying to add things to your cart at the moment. And I think, the algorithms behind it, I've been impressed from the beginning of the ability to track of hey, you usually buy this every week. You didn't add this time. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. I forgot. And it doesn't, even though it may be sponsored sometimes, but it doesn't feel like that as a consumer because you're like, oh no, I totally needed that right now. And so I think it's such an interesting, I think it's such a fascinating platform. So that's really interesting to hear the four-sided piece. And when you say 1,200 retailers, that means tens of thousands of actual retail doors, right?
Yes, exactly. So each retail banner, so to speak, has many, many stores. Depending on the size, could be many, many thousands, could be a few. But we have a wide variety of retailers on the marketplace. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we're definitely going to keep digging into, AI and some of the new features. And I've been playing with some of them, so I'm excited to talk about them. But can you kind of talk us through how ads have evolved on the platform, particularly from the brand side, like maybe, the brand experience too, of how that's evolved, of what's been available for brands, like types of ads that they've been able to serve, and then how, when and how AI has kind of been entering the picture into this advertising piece. Like, I'm curious, to kind of get us started in that area.
Definitely. So we've been on quite a journey over the last couple years, really, on, driving continued improvements in the core ads experience and then creating many, many more ways in which brands can reach and inspire consumers. And so, really, we started with sponsored products. You talked about sponsored products earlier, and they're exactly what they sound like. They're specific products that can be promoted across the stages of the shopping journey. The nice thing about our sponsored products offering is that it's not just a search ads product. It can actually be promoted products throughout, browsing the storefront of a retailer, on your way to checkout, when you're considering other items you want to add to your basket. But they're really anchored on specific products that can then be promoted that the advertiser is choosing to bid for, basically. And so that's a, relatively standard offering across the retail media space. I think what really sets us apart there is our ability to adapt across the multiple retailers that we offer on the marketplace and help to really tailor to the preferences and likelihood of interacting that a consumer may have. And then finally, in the results. And so this is a new piece of what we've really offered in the sponsored product space over the last year or so, which is not just looking at attributed metrics, not just looking at, return on ad spend, all those great bread and butter metrics that anyone advertising is familiar with, but actually getting to the heart of what is the incremental impact of sales driven by ads on Instacart. And so we've been investing in sales lift metrics, A/B testing, optimized bidding, which I can talk about a little bit more in kind of the ML and then AI space, but really driving the most efficient results we can, measuring that clearly, and then demonstrating to advertisers what true value and incremental value the platform is able to drive. And so that's sort of been our journey of, offering a core sponsored products offering, but really focusing on how we can drive and demonstrate the value of that offering to advertisers in a way that, really gets at the heart of what is truly going to be a major contributor to an advertiser's or a brand's business. Mm-hmm. So that's really the sponsored product space. And then we start to get into all the beautiful new formats, the more inspiration focused and discovery focused formats. And so those have also been new in the last year or so. And so this is all about expanding a little bit up funnel. So we talked earlier about Instacart's high intent. Consumers come in with an intent to shop. They may have a list in mind. They may have that list written down somewhere. We'll get to where AI can then come in and actually translate that into an easy shopping journey. But a lot of times consumers do have something in mind already, but what is the fun part of grocery shopping? The fun part of grocery shopping is you walk into the store, you look around, you get inspired by things, you decide to try something new. And we really want to create that feeling on the Instacart platform. If it's just a transactional platform, it's a little boring. Like, it may not be as fun. You may not have that opportunity to discover something new. And so we focused on kind of finding that sweet spot between Instacart's ability to drive that transaction and close the sale, and adding a little bit more inspiration and storytelling so brands can reach consumers in a kind of more exciting way. And so we've launched our shoppable video and shoppable display products that are specifically designed to do just that. So pair a rich media creative with a carousel of shoppable items that can help to then drive those kind of novel additions to a cart and drive discovery, especially for emerging brands who are kind of maybe earlier in telling their story and trying to get that excitement level to build, a new loyal customer interaction. And so that's been another big piece that we've invested in over the past year to really start to create a bit more of that fun and inspiration on the platform.
Interesting. And like, when for some of that content, like from a brand side, like, are brands generally like logging into like an Instacart backend to add those kind of videos and those kind of things? Are they using like I know I've used some third-party tools even a couple years ago that were sometimes AI powered for like some ad bidding, which we can talk about some of that too. But I'm curious, from like a back-end perspective, how are brands like getting this content onto the platform? Do they have the opportunity to like update their listings, or does some of the data just pull from like the retailer information? Like, how does kind of the brand's data end up there to then be used in these pieces?
Yeah, so we have a full-fledged ads manager offering. And so this is, similar to what you'd see on ads platforms that provide that sort of self-service tool that you can log into, create campaigns, edit your creative, monitor performance, all of those wonderful things. And so that's a fully self-service tool, and that's available to any advertiser advertiser who's advertising on Instacart. This is actually one of the first things I focused on as a product manager in ads was this sort of advertiser facing experience. And it's always an area that's just quite close to my heart for that reason, making sure we're really clear on how we're actually organizing our product portfolio. We just launched goal-based or objective-based buying in our ads manager that helps to take all of those different products I just mentioned, the different formats, different bidding options, and actually buckets them into goals that advertisers can use to understand what to put together to achieve reach, engagement, and sales on Instacart, and then the metrics that go along with that. And so that's an area we've been investing in quite a bit. And then to your point, there are also API implementations. And so we manage a read and write API that our API partners are able to use as well, which is really great when you're looking, at this rise of retail media. And many folks are looking for an extra level of expertise or management or optimization that can be offered by those API partners. They're also able to basically tap into our system via our API and then manage on behalf of customers or provide those additional services that they are so great at doing. So we have a really strong relationship with our API partners as well. And it's been something that's been really great to continue to grow, especially again, in this context of retail media growing so quickly. And, supporting those experts in the space has been a really important part of the whole ads ecosystem. And then the last thing I'll add is, when you're advertising on Instacart, you are already a brand who has sales of your product represented on Instacart through the retailers that we work with. And so if a product is available in a given retailer, when we are ingesting that catalog and supporting shopping and browsing of those products on Instacart, that's sort of the first step in the process. And so you're on the physical shelf, then you're on the digital shelf. But then what ads offer is then this ability to promote to a level that may not be possible on the physical shelf, or maybe much more dynamic and personalized and performant. And so, especially again, coming back to emerging brands, one of the things that's been very exciting to me is that an emerging brand may not be able to have the level of shelf space or promotion inside a store that an established brand might. But the physical shelf, because the physical shelf can't adapt. It can't say like, I think that you maybe really be interested in liquid death water, for an example. But on the digital shelf, that can be completely personalized. It can be dynamic. And so we can offer these abilities to connect with consumers in a really visual way, in a really prominent way, and then drive additional sales and discovery thanks to that level of customization and personalization.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point because, you think about how, like you said, as an emerging brand, you often don't get the greatest placement. You might be in the top upper corner of a shelf. You might be down on the bottom. And if you're just standing there looking at the shelf, you might not notice that brand. But if you're at home and you see it and you click, an experienced shopper is just going to go and they're going to be looking directly for that brand and they're going to grab it. And so it totally changes the game there on kind of leveling the playing field a little bit out for emerging brands to, at least digitally, you can be next to everybody else and be top of mind. So that's very interesting.
It's so funny because, when I get unsolicited feedback sometimes from my friends who are shopping on Instacart and actually have discovered new brands that way through a shoppable display unit or something. It's like, oh, I saw this thing. I bought it because of the ad. It was really exciting never knew about this brand before. And I mean, that's the kind of unsolicited feedback about ads that I love to receive. And so I love the fact that feels really authentically part of the experience as part of this platform.
Awesome. Well, there's a lot of different AI pieces in here, but I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the partnership specifically with Chat GPT. Like, what are some of the features that are powered by Chat GPT specifically? And is there a roadmap as part of that or for things that you see down the road? And maybe that's too far ahead, but kind of curious about the Chat GPT piece specifically and what that partnership has kind of looked like to explore and start to implement.
Yeah, so this has been a really exciting part of the Instacart journey. I feel so excited that we are early in this technology. We're leaning in really hard. We're getting excited and connected with partners in the space. And it's moving so quickly that even we talked about JJ, our leader in this space at Instacart. And, he is an absolute expert in this space. And even he says he can barely keep up with the level of change. And it's just such an exciting time. So on the Chat GPT front, we basically have two directions that this has gone in. So one is bringing the power of Instacart into Chat GPT. And this is more of the plugin angle. And so wherever we're able to help people complete a transaction on Instacart by plugging in our capabilities to where they are using ChatGPT. That's one angle where you can basically just make that, we talked about pixels into atoms. We can make that actually come to life in the context of a ChatGPT experience. So that's one angle. The piece where it's really starting to come to life and evolving on Instacart itself is with our Ask Instacart launch, which was just recently announced. And so this is all about bringing natural language and context and exploration and, much richer queries and questions and answers that can actually be asked on the Instacart platform. And so when you think about how people have, been trained to search, if I'm thinking about, I want to, plan for a barbecue this weekend, like, okay, well, what does that mean? I need like the meat, and I need maybe the tools, I need the whatever it is, like the charcoal, like all the different pieces that are going to create the barbecue experience that I want. And if you can just simplify that into what do I need for a barbecue? And then I actually get a set of products that are related to that, or what's for dinner, which is kind of like our perfect go-to example of a really complicated question that people struggle with literally every day. I know I do. The idea of actually taking in that question and understanding it and then recommending products as a result that you can then purchase and buy and get delivered to your door a few hours later, like that is a super magical experience and just the very beginning of what this technology can do. So I am really, really excited about this direction and the fact that we've been able to do this so early. We have so many rich opportunities and so much enthusiasm inside the company around shaping additional experiences like this. It's really, really cool. I am particularly excited about not just, the question and answer and like the chatbot kind of interaction, but also just how this threads through the entire experience. The idea of creating just a more personalized, truly dynamic storefront experience when I'm browsing what's, at my favorite retailer. It can just be so much richer and so much more responsive thanks to this technology. And it's just so exciting to see where it's all going to go.
Oh yeah, I want to dig a little bit more into both of those areas. The first one on the ChatGPT plugin side, because from the moment I saw the like TED Talk, I was like, I want to play with that. Like
Yes.
And so I have been playing with the plugin, and it's been super fun and just like really useful, like for meal planning. Like I've like tried to, like trick a little, like see like how deep does the knowledge go, like saying like, okay, I'm planning a meal for 4 people. One has celiac disease, one has a shellfish allergy. And I'm like, okay, does it understand that celiac disease means gluten-free? Like those kind of things. And like it did. And it popped out like a really great meal plan. And I was like, okay, that looks good. And it was like, do you want to send this to your Instacart? And I was like, yes. And then it just automatically
just
goes,
done. I know.
It's just in. And I was like, this is awesome. Like that saves so much time. I'm not someone that really enjoys a lot of the meal planning process. So I was like, this is a game changer for me, like to be able to like interact with a bot essentially to help me make decisions that I don't want to have to make. I was like, this is super helpful. So
yeah. And this is the amazing thing is like, that's not needing to now be individual training data and everyone's creating their own models and all of this. It's technology that we can share and actually make truly useful and connect across all of our interactions. It's going to be incredibly exciting. And that reaction of like, oh, can I trick it? Oh, actually, that was pretty good. I feel like that's also my reaction when I start to play with these things. It's like, will it understand? And following up on a previous question? Yep, it does. But it's truly mind-boggling just how quickly this has all moved.
I'm curious. My first question, especially from like, from startup CPG angle, when I was using it is, I think there was something, it said I should make, it suggested making a gluten-free cake, and it suggested, it wanted me to make it from scratch. So it was including the ingredients, and like one of, a couple items were branded, like a branded cocoa powder, branded. And I was curious, like how you see the branded part, like evolving, like how does it choose a brand? How can like how do you think an emerging brand will able to be pulled into some of these searches? Do you think there'll be opportunities for sponsorships? Will they be able to like update their listing to be like, rich with data for the AI to pull in? Like, I'm curious about the brand choosing process, and I'm sure it's evolving, but, I'd love your perspective.
Yeah, definitely evolving. And I think as you're seeing across the industry now too, everyone's trying to figure out like how in this completely new environment, how do ads and brands and advertisers kind of play within this space? And so we are really taking that exploratory approach as well. And I don't want to promise yet like what that solution is going to be, but there are a few things that we already know will work and are working. So when you receive, when you're working with Ask Instacart and you're asking it a question, that will ultimately create a set of products that are recommended that you buy that are based on the question that you asked. And so if you continue to navigate and like look at the products that are returned as a result of that question, you can see sponsored products as part of that experience. So that's kind of like the basic first stage. It's, wherever we show products and sponsored products are a good match, we will also be able to return sponsored products. So that's kind of by doing nothing on the advertising side, this is still a relevant query essentially that the ad can be returned for. But there's so much more beyond that we can do. And so as you might imagine, we hear a lot of enthusiasm from advertisers about this. And exactly as you said, it's a great way to encourage more discovery of both emerging brands and then products that folks may not have thought of buying on Instacart. We talk a lot about how it's not just fresh grocery, it's also your household items, your personal care items, like everything you need to kind of complete the totality of the task that you have at hand and that the Ask Instacart experience can help guide you toward. And so we are definitely going to be exploring and iterating on kind of richer ads experiences and sponsored experiences and ways in which brands can get involved in being a part of this experience. So realize I don't have like a lot of specifics on exactly what we're going to do yet there, but that's for a reason, because we really want to see where this evolves, how consumers are interacting, and then what other experiences might really make sense to drive new and exciting value for brands and also for consumers who are just learning how to navigate and adapt to these new experiences. So there's going to be a lot up ahead for us, but just starting on those basic terms of making sure that sponsored products are part of the experience is really the place that we've started, and we'll continue to grow from there.
It's really interesting to just hear how you're thinking about it evolving. And because among the many thoughts I've had of trying this, I'm like, this would be so interesting as an opportunity to like train the app on like also like your preferences kind of thing of like, okay, like, maybe it knows that when I say I want to make dinner for friends, I also want to choose climate friendly brands when I can, or I want to choose women or LGBTQ plus like owned brands when I can. And so that it could like help prioritize based on your, like, we've had like Social Nature on our show, and they talk a lot about like how like, wellness consumers are very driven by the different areas that they feel passionate about. So to be able to like maybe even bring those into the shopping experience, I was like, that'd be cool for me from a consumer. I was like, if I could discover brands that match with my values, like right in using the AI, using Instacart, and then it all shows up at my door. That's where I'm kind of thinking like, that would be so cool.
Yeah, I love that. And I think this is also kind of speaking to the power of the Instacart data specifically in enhancing what you can do with technology like this. So, for example, the power of our catalog. Our catalog, again, spans all those different retail partners that we work with and all of the US and Canada. And so we have a really rich set of first-party data. And we have different attributes on different types of products. And to your point, it could be gluten-free items. It could be kosher items. It could be taking that next step ahead, the idea of like eco-friendly or, socially conscious brands or whatever it may be. The idea of being able to build out more of these attributes, take in more of those attributes as data, and then be able to return a truly personalized set of recommendations for the consumer. That's really the promise of this technology. And I think even starting where we are now with the richness of our catalog, it provides a ton of different experiences and options and personalization that, build on what Instacart's been doing for a long time with, ML powered personalization and remembering what you've bought before and providing you with suggestions that are going to resonate with you. But it's just that much richer and that much more resonant to like build these authentic discovery moments with a consumer. So that, yeah, absolutely. I think that's just a great vision for the future that we're all moving toward.
Are you a founder or critical operator spending too much time on bookkeeping, expense classification, and tweaking your financial model when you should be spending your time on customers and growth? Cue Graphite. They are a full finance department as a service for early stage and growing CPG startups. Think of having a CFO, controller, and bookkeeper, but for the fraction of the cost of hiring even one internal team member. That's Graphite. The truth is that most CPG founders fail due to a lack of understanding of their unit economics, aka a lack of proper accounting and finance. To download their free financial model template, free chart of accounts template, and other resources, go to graphitefinancial.com/CPG. Graphite is also offering a special discount just for our listeners of 8% off their accounting and forecasting services. Head to graphitefinancial.com/CPG to claim your discount. That's Graphite, GRAPHITE, financial.com/CPG. You need to pay for tomorrow's growth, but today's cash flow just doesn't quite cover it. So what do you do when you need inventory funding now? Welcome to Kick Further. Kick Further funds up to 100% of the cost of inventory up front, and you don't have to pay them back until that inventory begins to sell. Kick Further funding is not a loan, doesn't appear as debt on your books, and does not require equity. It's just capital right at the moment you need it to pay your most expensive cost, your inventory. Kickfurther has already supported over 1,000 opportunities, including working for brands that you may know like Dr. Squatch and Good Wipes. To see how much inventory funding you qualify for today, go to kickfurther.com/startupcpg. That's kickfurther, kickfurther.com/startupcpg. kickfurther.com/startupcpg to learn more. From the brand side, is there any best practices or especially for an emerging brand, say you log into the Instacart, portal, or you're logging in through a third party, that's accessing the API, is there anything that brands can do, as far as adding more data to their listing or adding more keywords or things that you see really help an emerging brand set up for success? Because I know sometimes I might be searching for a brand that's smaller. I know about them because I've accessed them. And, their listing is, there's maybe no image yet, and they may be new at the retailer, but, it's very basic because they're just kind of getting set up. Is there anything that you see emerging brands that really do well on the platform set up on the back end really intentionally that other brands can maybe take away?
That's a great question. And I think that really does actually stay in this theme of the power of automation. And so, maybe some of that's good old fashioned machine learning and not yet AI, but of course it's all getting there. And so we've really invested in creating a pretty, I don't want to say like 100% ready to go one click setup, but pretty easy to use and set up platform where you don't need to think about each individual keyword you want to add. We are able to infer that from the products that you sell. And we are able to optimize toward an outcome that you would like. So if you want to maximize sales, you can use our optimized bidding capability, which will automatically manage bids on your behalf. So you don't need to think about the bid value for each keyword and all of the kind of, nuts and bolts of pay-per-click advertising. And so if you really combine that ability to figure out which keywords make sense and then drive toward the outcome that you would like, that's a relatively easy way to get started for an emerging brand, and something that I've been really happy to see us be able to focus on and launch with great results to make sure that we're not adding too much burden to really set up a campaign that's going to perform really quite well. And so that's really what I would recommend, especially as we're thinking about these more dynamic and personalized experiences that we've been talking about. That automation is going to do the right thing in those experiences. You don't need to think about, what questions might people be asking in Ask Instacart that I want to show up for. That's all going to map back to the relevant keyword, the relevant item. And so it can all, quote unquote, just work, which is really exciting in a space like this where additional manual twiddling of keywords and bids is probably not going to be the way to take advantage of those new consumer behaviors. So that's something that I expect we're going to rely on even more as we continue to move in this direction. And then as you mentioned on figuring out, the images and making sure products are represented correctly, that's another piece of what we offer in our self-service tool. So we have a product library feature where brands can come in and figure out, what images might they want to suggest instead of the default image that we get from our catalog or from the retailer. And then how else do they want to make sure that their brands are properly represented? And so this is a great way to kind of bring those two parts of Instacart together, like how your products are represented out of the box, and then how you actually want to promote and manage your campaigns and monitor the performance of them.
Oh, great. All super helpful information. And so on the Ask Instacart piece that you were referencing, and this is something also that I was playing with in the platform. And in my own interface, it popped up with here's what people are wondering that you can ask Instacart. And it was for me, what popped up, and I'm curious about how this is catered per user. It was what are the most popular flavors of Spindrift? And I was like, this is absolutely a relevant question for me because I drink so much Spindrift. But I was like, oh, this is fun. And so I was kind of playing with the different prompts that it suggested for me. And so I'm curious, like how, personalized to the user is that? How, like when it's defining popular, is that based on like, shopper data within the platform? Like how does that work? How is it helping generate some of those prompts for users? Like, I'm curious about that.
Yeah, definitely. And this will also, of course, continue to evolve over time too, as we continue on this whole journey. So in general, across Instacart, we've been using ML and increasingly generative AI to personalize what we show to consumers. And, the probably stating the extremely obvious, but as many folks who have worked in this space know, you can do a really good job curating something manually, or you think you have an idea of how products should show to a given user or set of users. And machine learning and increasingly generative AI will outperform it almost all the time. And so we are always working on figuring out what are the right sorts of, signals and personalization or personalized experiences that will best resonate with a consumer, whether it's, just the good old fashioned, again, storefront and set of carousels that you're seeing with recommended products, or increasingly now in the generative AI space where we can actually offer these more dynamically tailored and personalized prompts to help kind of inspire the types of questions that people might be interested in asking. And so absolutely, this will continue to be personalized based on what we see people doing on the platform, what people like you might be doing on the platform, what you specifically have done on the platform before. And again, when you think again about like how this breadth of in depth of data that we have around how consumers are shopping and how this is kind of changing based on where they are, who they are, how they're shopping, all of these different things, we're able to do this at a scale across our retail partners that is really quite different from what you would see if you looked at a specific retailer or a specific location only. And so it's really building on that core strength, I think, of Instacart of being able to personalize across all of these different dimensions and then build a great experience, especially now in the Ask Instacart space. As consumers are getting used to asking questions like this, I think it's particularly valuable to make sure that we're giving them a starting point, because it's not going to be the same old search for bananas that so many people do. It's going to be training people to think a little more broadly and expect a different type of response and be excited to explore. So I love that the suggestion for you is so personalized. That's perfect. And that's very much what we'll want to be doing.
Oh, interesting. And so I'm also curious on the, like, it seems like with like machine learning, ML that you mentioned, and like the generative AI, these pieces, like it's all evolving very quickly from like the Instacart side. Like, what does that look like for your team? Like, is it like, is a lot of the updates kind of constantly happening? Is there also updates where like, you're pushing an update like to the Instacart app? How long in between kind of big updates? Like, what does this look like on the back end for your team to manage? Because it seems like it's going so fast. And I'm wondering how you keep up. And like I said, push updates to people's phones, update the interface. Like, what does that look like on the back end?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very fast moving company. It was something that really struck me when I joined. Things that I might have expected, might go out in the next quarter or so. It's like, okay, is 2 weeks good? Like, sometimes, of course, things could take longer, or maybe be more complicated. But I think my internal rhythm for what I expected in terms of product releases and iterations has like massively shortened. And so it is really quite exciting, especially in this space where we want to experiment. We want to understand how consumers are responding. We want to try something quickly. We want to even do internal demos on like what cool thing might we be able to do with this new technology. That is happening on a very ongoing basis. And so really the only limiting factor is, someone installing the updated version of the app on their phone, for example. And so changes are being pushed out constantly. It's really a, daily and weekly cadence for teams. And so it's a very, very fast pace of change. And I think in a lot of ways, especially in the, the advertising space, that doesn't mean we should be constantly changing things every day. It means we can fix things every day. We could try new experiments every day, but we need to make sure that we're building a narrative that actually sits well with advertisers and that brands can kind of understand and respond to and figure out kind of where our heads are at in terms of how we want to actually evolve the platform. So finding that right balance of how to actually build like a B2B narrative, for example, versus this fast pace of iteration, that's something that also takes quite a bit of balance, I think, internally. And that's something that I personally really love, like the idea of taking all of these changes in the technology and then figuring out, okay, like how does this start to make sense as a cohesive strategy and as a narrative and set of capabilities that we can now start to frame a little bit more clearly for for a business to really understand what's going to drive their bottom line. And so then more generally getting back to your question on generative AI and how quickly that part is moving. So the most fun thing for me has been to see the engineers on the team just absolutely go to town on demos, trying new things, figuring out different applications, whether it's literally, easier debugging of data, like internal productivity tools, to ways in which we might be able to help advertisers better understand what to do within our ads manager interface, things that are more advertiser facing, ways we can help our sales and support teams to better understand how to answer questions for our customers. And then moving into how do we improve the core experience and create more relevant personalized moments, like we mentioned, throughout the entirety of the core Instacart app experience. And then finally, more of like the chatbot type like interactions, which of course have, captured the hearts and minds of so many people around the world. And so all of these pieces can really, be something that engineers just get really excited about pursuing and start to build momentum around. And so my approach to this personally has really been, I want to make sure we're asking the question, like, what is this new technology actually enabling us to think about or do in a way that was totally unimaginable like 6 months ago? And how do we make sure that we're really thinking about and like pushing ourselves forward on the type of product development that we want to focus on? And let's also just try some cool stuff and figure out, time for demos and time for smaller pilots and things where we can just test and learn. Because in a space like this where you just have no idea what the next 2 months are going to look like, we need to keep that level of like iteration and excitement. And I love seeing that really just bubble over on the teams, and they can just dig into so many exciting things without really any prompting at all.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. It sounds really fun. But yeah, it is interesting to balance, because like even if the technology keeps progressing, like that doesn't mean that the consumer is ready for all of that in their
Exactly.
app immediately. Like you said, like Ask Instacart, you have to kind of learn how it works. It needs to give you some ideas so you can start to learn how to use it. Or from a brand perspective, if like the way that you buy your ads or everything in like your back end, if that all just like, changes too quickly, like, you have to help people along the change curve. And so
Absolutely.
it's both exciting, but also like, you have to manage all those pieces.
So true. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, people are people and they still need to learn and get comfortable with new things. And so that's really our responsibility, and like shaping something that actually resonates with real human beings, real businesses, real brands, and so on.
Awesome. And then I want to circle back a little bit to the ad interface that brands have access to, because I believe there's some like automation that can happen where you can kind of like set bids and those kind of things. And then there are third party companies, like I've used one where it will kind of do the kind of set bidding for you and kind of set it, forget it. You set up a bunch of rules, those kind of things. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about some of the opportunities within there to kind of set some automation as a brand and set goals. You mentioned some of like, kind of maximizing sales, but I just want to leave some space to talk a little bit more about the opportunities to use automation to set up a campaign with an Instacart that really fits your emerging brand.
Definitely. And yeah, this has been a really exciting part of what we focused on, again, really over the past 12 to 18 months. And so, kind of moving from a world in which, like I mentioned before, you can imagine an interface where you're specifically describing, which keywords you want your products to show up for, which bids do you want for each of those keywords, and many other ways in which you could kind of manually identify how you want to actually run your campaign. But when we're able to have so much context and so much first party data around how consumers are responding to products and how those products fit into our catalog and whether they're likely to be in stock and all of these different things that we're able to do from an Instacart perspective, it helps us to really set up a pretty darn good default kind of setup for a campaign without much work at all. And so I spoke earlier about how, a brand can simply, once they start to advertise with us, they can decide which products they want to promote as, a set of sponsored products. And then we can figure out which keywords those are likely to best correspond with and what's going to perform. And then with our optimized bidding offering, we can take that work of selecting the specific cost per click bids off the advertiser's hands, and we can actually just optimize to drive the most sales possible at the most efficient level. And then the advertiser can optionally set, a return on ad spend guardrail or whatever they may choose. And so when you think about really that basic setup of drive sales on Instacart with ads, that is our most performant offering, is just utilizing optimized bidding. We've seen with A/B testing that optimized bidding consistently outperforms manual bidding. It drives more sales at more efficient prices. And so it's been really rewarding actually to see just how well that's been embraced by advertisers, especially by emerging brands who, for obvious reasons, are just working often with way fewer people and they need a little bit more help or a little bit more understanding about how to actually drive that maximization of sales. And so essentially setting and forgetting a campaign like that is a really great way to just get the most efficiency possible and the best results possible with Instacart ads without all that much work. And so then what I think is particularly exciting for me is like the ability then to go back to that first party measurement and the strength of how we're able to actually measure the overall effectiveness of those campaigns when you look at A/B testing and you look at sales lift and ways to actually prove the bottom line sales impact of our sponsored products campaigns. That's consistently coming back with really strong results. And we've seen these, double-digit sales lift results really consistently across our platform. And that is really utilizing the best of this automation and technology that we're able to continue to scale and improve over time. So you kind of cross that with the ability for generative AI to do even more personalized, drive even more engagement and sales coming from consumers who are really interested and engaged in deciding to buy something based on an ad. That will only get better. And so that to me is really, really exciting that we've been able to scale those results and continue to really invest in both driving the value and then measuring that value for advertisers. In addition to that, kind of getting back to the set of goals and objectives that advertisers can optimize toward when it comes to driving engagement and driving reach on the platform. That's really where the power of the format itself is coming into play and the ability to, like I mentioned earlier, pair that kind of rich media imagery, the video that shows how the product can be enjoyed or used with the ability to directly buy it immediately with the shoppable carousel just beneath. That's the way in which we can, utilize these objectives or goals to basically easily suggest to a brand who's just getting started that these might be the right products for them, paired with specific targeting options, and then paired with the metrics that can actually show that outcome. And so these are areas that we'll, of course, continue to invest in over time. And we're always going to be working on ways to make optimization better and easier and more easily measured. But it's been a really great journey to start to put these solutions together for advertisers so they start to make sense. And then, of course, can drive the value that they can really see on the other side.
That's super helpful. And yeah, I think I was impressed even a couple years ago, and so much has gone into the platform, since then, just of how friendly it was for an emerging brand. A lot of advertising platforms are built for big advertisers because, that's where a lot of the dollars has been. And so like I said, even a couple years ago, I was hesitant, is this going to be useful as an emerging brand? Is this going to be built for me? And it started working very quickly. And I was super impressed. This is not sponsored. I just genuinely think it was super fascinating to see how useful it could be as an emerging brand to start to get data. And then also as a tool in your toolbox for retailer partnerships, because so many retailers are on Instacart, say I'm New Seasons Market is here local to me. It's on Instacart. If your emerging brand gets into New Seasons and you're running ads on Instacart, you can share that data then back with New Seasons and say, hey, look how I supported, our product and your store with our sponsored ads on Instacart. And I think it's another interesting tool to build stronger retailer partnerships that emerging brands have in their tool pocket as well, that has really great data behind it. So I think it's all just super exciting.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm so glad you even thought that, a couple years ago, because we've come a long way even since then. But I think this idea of really building I don't want to toot our own horn, but really a first-class ads platform that is kind of utilizing a lot of what many of us on the team have learned working, across the industry and seeing what's worked, seeing what hasn't, seeing how we can best strike that balance of control and automation and which sorts of metrics we really want to lean into and differentiate ourselves versus others in the space. It's been a really, really fun journey. And I think to your point about making sure, brands are really taking advantage of where they have that distribution, the idea of Instacart of buying ads easily across the entirety of the marketplace, wherever those products are sold, as a brand is building their reputation and their distribution, the ads will automatically show wherever they are relevant. And so wherever those products are in stock and wherever customers are excited to discover them. And so that's another great way to think of it really as a one-stop shop across the retailers that we work with. And then, help a brand expand their reach and expand their engagement pretty easily without thinking about individually taking those steps each time they win a new offering of shelf space.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really good point on the, for emerging brands, when you don't have nationwide distribution, you don't want to serve ads to people that can't buy your product in other platforms. In the Instacart platform, it's going to serve it to people that have access to your product at a store that
Exactly right.
A shopper can get to. So yeah, that eliminates, it's not going to people who can't access your product, which is really interesting.
I think that's one of the biggest pieces when, again, just as we talked about at the very beginning, like the idea that you're actually advertising and then that product will be in the consumer's hands within an hour. Like that is a really magical thing. But inherent in that is our ability to understand what's likely to be in stock, what has been seen recently on the shelves by shoppers, where is the product in our catalog, and which, flavors or variations are available. All of that is just already true. And then the advertiser just needs to activate the additional boost of awareness and sales that they're able to get from ad solutions. So I do think that that's a really, it's what makes it such an interesting ads platform to me. Just the basic concept of what we're able to do essentially out of the box, just based on Instacart's model, is already really interesting. And then on top of that, if we're able to drive, great automation and results and continue to kind of build these core capabilities for advertisers, it just makes it that much better.
I'm also curious, one last area I want to check into is because you mentioned customer service and how AI and automation are feeding into that area as well, because I think the customer service piece is interesting on a brand side, because say a shopper brings something back to you and maybe it's expired or maybe the seal is broken or something, and a customer is going to go in, interact with the Instacart customer service team, and that experience might, will have an impact on probably the person's view of that brand potentially. And I will be the first to say Instacart's customer service has always been incredible. So I'm curious how you use technology to power that customer service and keep the experience, super positive for the customer.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I'm glad your experience has been positive. I will definitely share that with my ops friends. So this is definitely an area where I think AI has a ton of potential. I have personally found that in my own experiences of actually starting to use chatbots like out in the wild and actually get my questions answered, they're pretty darn good. I mean, newsflash, like generative AI is great, but it is a really powerful tool in the toolkit. And I think this is something that the customer facing teams are absolutely looking into. I think the important piece here is at the end of the day, like I said, just as we need to get comfortable with new ways of interacting, all of our customers do too. And that human interaction is a really important part of great customer service and the image of a company. And to your point, not just representing Instacart itself, but the retailer and the brand and everybody who's kind of involved in the actual creation of that moment and that order for the consumer. So for me, it's really about looking again for these ways in which the technology can enhance or create a faster experience or a smarter experience. So you don't have that feeling of like, oh, I have to comb through a bunch of help docs and figure out what I want to do. And then finally, I guess I'll contact someone. If we can answer a question really quickly and easily, amazing. There may be cases where that's not true or where someone just simply would rather speak to a human. And so these are all things that we need to balance as we figure out how best to utilize this technology. And I think it again comes back to really first figuring out what can this enable us to do? And then what should we do based on it? And that's going to take a lot of iteration, a lot of exploration, a lot of really smart people, thinking through the implications of this, not just for Instacart, but across all of our interactions online and increasingly offline. So I went a little broad there, but I think generally speaking, this is definitely an area that we're digging into. And I expect a lot of companies similarly to start looking at how generative AI can not necessarily replace, but enhance the experience of needing help, finding a resolution and finding answers to your questions. And, same thing goes for supporting brands, supporting advertisers, and making sure that we have a really excellent, sales team, which we do. And they're absolutely wonderful and super knowledgeable to work with. But if we can help to quickly answer a question that's on someone's mind without needing to go through that whole process, all the better.
Great. Well, this is awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to share or leave us with? Or I'll make sure in the show notes to include links to Instacart, links to the brand interface for Instacart. But is there anything else you would like me to include in the show notes or you want to mention or shout out that we didn't cover?
I think for me, it's really just this excitement about starting to mature and scale as an ads platform, and having built out a lot of solutions over the past year or two that have really enhanced the core offering that we can help advertisers use to drive value. And it really comes back to driving value and then understanding what that value actually is. I think that is really what's always top of mind for me, working in this business and working specifically on ads at Instacart. And now having done that and having kind of reached this next stage of maturity for our platform, along comes this technology that is going completely to transform so much of what we do and enhance so much of what we've already invested in. So for me, it's both, reflecting on what we've been able to accomplish as an ads platform, but then now wow, look at the future. Like the future is here. There's so much more that we're going to be able to do. So for me, that's when I think about AI and then, where it's going to help us go as an ads team and as an Instacart team. That's what's really exciting to me.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited as well. And just so appreciate you coming and sharing with us today. This has been super enlightening and helpful. I think our listeners are going to really enjoy it. So thank you so much for just spending time with us and sharing. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And it's so fun that you're not only an Instacart user, but you've actually used the ads platform. That's so cool. So thank you for sharing all of that. And I'm so glad you've had such a great experience with it.
Thank you for listening in today. I'm so honored you joined me for this conversation, and I love hearing from you all with feedback, suggestions, or if you just want to say hi at podcast@startupcpg.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. If you liked this episode, we'd love for you to share it with a friend or colleague, subscribe so you don't miss future episodes, and maybe even leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. If you aren't yet in our Slack community of founders and experts, we'd love to see you there. You can get the free invite at startupcpg.com and find all our other awesome resources there, like webinars, databases, the blog, the magazine, and virtual and in-person events. And if you found yourself rocking out to our intro and outro music, which I do every single time, make sure to check out the Super Fantastics on Spotify. It's the band of our Startup CPG founder, Daniel Scharf. I'm Jessie Freitag, your host and producer, and on behalf of the whole team at Startup CPG, thank you for being here and see you next week.